connected with me in advance to chuck in links or take the time to look me up. That's great. We're going to do basically three things. We're going to talk a little bit about, well, what the heck is LinkedIn besides Facebook for old people or whatever you think it is. Two, and most importantly, how is it going to help you? How is it going to help you get into grad school? How is it going to help you get a job, an internship? And how is it going to help you now and in the future? And then we're going to do some exercises that are going to be around crafting a profile. And Rich and I will walk through that. And so people online will do our best to sort of guide that as well. We're going to tweak this sound to look perfect. Doesn't get any higher than that. Hopefully that's good for the people online. If not, I'll keep playing with it. I'll get a mic. I'll get two mics. I'll start talking louder, whatever I need to do. Because I'm committed. Committable. Congratulations, Kathy, for doing an internship at LinkedIn and joining LinkedIn. Very happy to have you. So let's get started. First, we need to do a quick pulse check. Who has a LinkedIn profile by raising your hand? Okay, lift your hands up. Who does not? Okay, if you do not, right, put the coffee down, put the iPhone down, get off Facebook, right? We're going to make sure you have a profile, right? So the people that don't have a profile and see that you do have a computer, that's all you need. We're going to change that. And you have friends here. I can take a picture. You can go ahead and do that when we get to that section. So let's go ahead and get started. First of all, as I said, we're going to talk about what is LinkedIn, how can it help you, and what should you do to get started.
If you're watching this, chances are good you want to get a job. You want to go from...
Okay, I'm going to start with the marketing video, and I'm going to have to crank this up a little bit using the mic, but this is a real good introduction to the whole what LinkedIn is.
Chances are good you want to get a job. You want to go from student to rising star, and you want to avoid eating the same meal over and over and over again. Good news, you're in the right place. That's right, LinkedIn. It's not just for top executives. It's not just for old people with heavy briefcases. It's for you, and it's the perfect place for you to start your professional story. Say you want to get a job in New York City. You've never been there before, but that's okay because you have LinkedIn on your side. Start by creating your profile. You give it love because you know it's what recruiters are looking for day and night. It's your resume that never sleeps. It's your flashing neon sign that says, hire me, for the love of all that is good in this world, hire me. Then you start making connections. Alumni working in New York? Yes. Recruiters to top companies in New York? Yes. Your mom's best friend? Yes. You start imagining whose shoes you want to walk in. You think, wow, this is a lot of deep stuff to consider. You shake yourself out of it and start searching for jobs. Whoa, that's a lot of jobs for students. Time to get down to business. You start to tailor your profile. You start applying. You feel empowered, in control, like you should be CEO. That gives you an idea. You look up all the CEOs of all the companies you want to work at. You see one of them went to your university. Then it hits you. You see a clear path from campus to career. You feel like you can see the future. You wonder if you're psychic. Should you start a hotline? No, back to plan A. You keep tailoring and connecting and applying, and before you know it, you start getting responses. First a few, then more, then an interview, and then you're hired. And that's when the real learning begins.
So that's a little bit about, quick hit on LinkedIn, and then we'll kind of set the tone for what we're going to talk about. I mean, essentially, we're the largest professional network in the world. We actually have some 82 million members right now, and that is growing at about 2 members per second. The good news is these are the people that, while the majority of them could be old people, those are the people that actually have jobs or internships or whatever have you. So we've got a really growing network. One thing that is really interesting is that LinkedIn has enjoyed a pretty good growth rate among students. In fact, it's the fastest growing segment. Of course, we have a pop quiz here, and want to get an answer to how many students or recent grads are on LinkedIn. If you're online, you can put that in the chat box. If you're here, you can raise your hand. I'll pick on you, and we can get an answer. Anyway, sir. D? You're right. It's actually 32 million students and recent graduates. I'm glad to see this fist bumping is still in, because I still do that. I met Rich earlier, he picked me up, and I was like, doing that, making sure that's still cool. Thank God, right? So students are our fastest growing group, for sure. What makes us different, right? So, other networks are really personal or social, right? If I was up here sharing my Facebook profile, you'd have trust me, you'd have a completely different perspective on me than the professional context. So that's really the key thing, is social context, personal context, professional context. And because of the beauty of the web being so interspersed and searchable, you want to make sure you delineate that, right? Especially the guys in the frat, right? The fraternity, that, right? If you went to Ithaca College, let's say here, we didn't have a lot of that. That was Cornell had all that stuff. So apparently that's very prevalent here. I want to be sensitive to that. Rich is looking at me. That's great. Fraternities are very important. So how can LinkedIn help you? Really 3 ways. 1, explore careers. 2, choose a grad school, if that's the path you're going to take. And most importantly, get a job. Now, aside from the standard LinkedIn marketing speak, the way people get jobs or find jobs or internships or their dream job, it really effectively hasn't really changed ever in like a century. You get jobs by way of who you know, right? I'm sitting at the Super Bowl party at my brother who lives in LA at his house, and he has all his friends over, and all his friends are have kids that are in college, they're your age. Brother's much older than me, and extremely older than me. But anyway, so he's talking, and I did a little pulse check because, I'm obviously drinking the LinkedIn Kool-Aid. I said, well, your kid's on LinkedIn. No, they're not. My own niece and nephew are on LinkedIn. My niece is a sophomore at Dickinson College. She's a very talented artist. She wants to get a job or an internship this summer at LACMA or Getty, one of the big museums. So I said to my brother, I said, well, let me just show you something really quick. I know Paris is not on LinkedIn. Let me just show you something real quick. And I went into LinkedIn and I said, look, here are all the people that went to Dickinson College that graduated from the school that Paris is at, my niece. And here's the jobs they have at these 2 companies, these 2 museums. It turns out 189 people, of which I know 4. Maybe not they're my best friends, but I'm connected to them in some way that's useful. And my brother and my sister-in-law put down the glass of wine, and we're like, holy crap. And they're texting her, and we're having this whole online thing getting around LinkedIn. So the point is, you can definitely, if you start by getting on LinkedIn, we're going to show you some ways to start harnessing LinkedIn for the very purpose of getting an opportunity, whatever that may look like. Many times that may not be, becoming an MBA and working for Accenture. It might be something completely different. You may be called to do something completely different. And one of the things I would suggest that LinkedIn provides for is the ability to find that, whatever that may be, in a lot of different ways. I'm going to just run through this really quickly, but meet the mythical David, right? The guy that the marketing team put together into this deck. But here's how things actually work, how to find these career paths. As I said, one of the first ways to do things is actually look at connectivity, specifically alumni connectivity. Because besides your brother or your uncle or your parents and their connections, right, you really don't have a vast network. Most people just don't. However, you always have Pepperdine, right? And I would suggest that affinity is the most important connection, even potentially more important than sort of past your family, of course, the sort of ancillary connections that people have. So you can actually, has anyone, by the way, been to the LinkedIn alumni tool? Anybody? Cassie? Good news. So this actually, we'll delve into it. It's actually the biggest secret at LinkedIn. It's the ability to actually look at all the alumni, in this case of Berkeley, figure out what they studied, where they're working, how they're connected. You can even look at what majors and fields of study, and actually look at what they're doing now and where they work. This becomes particularly helpful if you actually want to get a glimpse into the future. I'll share a quick story with you. When I went to school in upstate New York, and I graduated in 1991, many of you probably weren't born or whatever, but, you know, essentially I had a really, really strong interest in two things. Snowboarding, backcountry snowboarding. Anybody snowboard here? Anybody? So back then it was, you know, having a Burton like Woody or Performer, and I'd have my Herman Survivors, I'd duct tape them, and I'd go up this hill, and I would have this guy who happened to be a buddy of mine, a film student, and he'd take these like 16 millimeter films. And he'd say, oh, it'd be cool if you went down and like jumped off this, you know, cornice and like over this rock and stuff. I'm like, sure, man, no problem. I loved it. But actually, I got a degree in healthcare administration and gerontology, largely because I was influenced by just a few people. You know, my brothers, my parents, and so on. In fact, my mom was a secretary in a hospital. She was so adamant this is the way to go make money and do all this stuff, right? Well, it turns out, hard to believe, I wasn't that interested in making gajillions of dollars wearing a suit. I was more interested in doing things that were outdoors and around visual storytelling or just storytelling. So one of the things I would contend is LinkedIn not only helps you with your personal branding, finding an internship, finding a job, and staying connected with your people you went to school with, but it truly is a way that you can explore paths that you haven't even thought of, or potentially paths that you seem like they're impossible. And we'll try to make that come along. So you can actually connect, by the way, through this alumni tool along those lines with people that have these jobs that are alumni. Recently, well, a couple years ago, it's actually not that recent, I was in a direct sales role at LinkedIn. And I started using this tool to find people that went to Ithaca College, that graduated the same year I did. Lo and behold, I found people that were in these great positions at companies, some of the companies that I was sort of looking to get in on. And guess what? They were very happy, you know, to talk about Ithaca. You know, if you've ever been there, anybody been to Ithaca by chance? Yeah? Nobody. It's kind of what they say is it's 10 square miles surrounded by reality, which sums it up really well. It's a college town with Cornell and Ithaca College in the middle of like nowhere in New York State. So it's a really interesting place. So when you call someone from there, probably not unlike, hey, you know, when I had mentioned to Rich, I said, you know, I know you went to Pepperdine. I'm going to go for the first time. I've never been there ever, and talk to some students. He was like, yeah, I'm coming with you. So it's been great. So the other thing you can do is you can really look at, finding internships by way of who had internships in the past. So you can actually use this tool to figure out, well, where do people do their internships and what did that get them? Where did they end up? I'll pause for a second and say that in talking with your career services folks here, with Amy and Mela and Rebecca and everybody, you've got probably one of the most sophisticated and smartest groups of career services people anywhere in the world. And I'm qualified to say that because I've talked to hundreds of these folks, and they're really genned up to help you. You've got a really special place here, and Rich and I are both really fortunate to be here. By the way, appreciate it. So that's the tool. LinkedIn's a good place to find your dream job or internships as well. We've got a site, it's /student jobs, and we'll show you that as well. It's a way to basically go and look at a pre-baked search that has all the jobs and internships, and you're going to see this thing grow tremendously. Literally, you'll find all of the companies, major employers and small employers, that are out there with jobs, having their jobs on here. So it's a good way to get started. In addition, we'll kind of go through some ways you can actually explore companies that are coming on your campus. You can figure out if you have connectivity with those folks, and so on. So there's a lot of ways to do that. And another thing that sort of has I have thought through lately is the idea that, okay, you know, Rich and I talk all the time about, okay, get on LinkedIn, you can find jobs, you can find alumni, but how do you actually make all this come along? And I'm going to tell you, it's a little bit of work. But once you start establishing a network, staying in touch with this network, you'll be surprised. I really believe that you'll be surprised at all the things that can happen. I'll share another just brief story. When I was about 6 or 7 years ago, I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, by the way. I've got 3 kids, and at the time they were pretty small, and now they're teenagers looking at going to college, and my baby's 11 now, so she's grown up. which is why when I text, I always put that KK in there, like trying to be cool. But anyway, years ago, I was in a position where I was doing a lot of soul searching. I literally couldn't even pay my mortgage. I didn't have a job. I had a lot of things going on. And LinkedIn actually helped me because it's sort of like, in addition to it being an insurance policy, it's sort of like a lottery ticket. I like video games. I like a game called Rock Band. Anyone ever play that game? It's kind of a pretty fun game if you're into music. Anyway, long story short, out of the blue, I had done some consulting work trying to keep things afloat and everything with a video game company in Raleigh. This guy, Ron McDonald, calls me up. So I see your LinkedIn profile, I want to talk to you. I'm like, who is this guy? Turns out he was one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people that particular year. He invented Guitar Hero, Rock Band, graduated top of his class at MIT, and runs this company called Harmonix Music Systems that builds all those games and was acquired by MTV Games. So I'm like literally, like I'm talking to this guy, he's like, I want you to come up to Cambridge, Massachusetts. I'm going to pay you a ton of money. I'm going to fly you up there every week for 9 months to help us hire all the people to make Rock Band 2. And you can imagine how excited I was. It was like my lottery ticket got punched. I was in such doldrums, and all of a sudden I'm up and working in the epicenter of this huge game. And I'm actually the only recruiter at the time, and still am, I guess, that has a game credit for being a recruiter at a video game company. So sorry to digress, but this stuff really can come alive. Really, really can come alive. Okay, so pop quiz, what % of jobs are found by applying for job ads on LinkedIn specifically? Anybody have a guess on that? Anybody else? Good question. I don't even know if I believe this statistic. They say 30% by way of applying for job ads. This is specific to entry level or internships, by the way, so it's sort of a relative to you, of course. Getting the inside edge, jobs come through networking, obviously, so the other 70%, we'll actually get into that. We'll get real, we'll get live, and we'll do that. And then being found. This is really an important piece of the puzzle and a transition to what we're going to do, which is sort of a profile makeover, or for you that don't have one, building a profile out. We'll do a little bit of an exercise there. You know, when you actually go and search for Rob Humphrey, I know that you're going to find my LinkedIn profile. It's a professional perspective on what I've done, where I've been. I encourage you to connect with me. Not only does it feed my ego, it helps me find a lot of different vectors for how we can work together or help each other out. And I encourage it. Because I'm 44 years old. The way I look at it is I'm going to be working for one of you someday. I'm not even kidding. I believe that's going to happen. So I'm going to be, hitting 50s or whatever, and one of you is going to be a CEO of some startup or whatever, and I'm going to knock on your door and say, hey, hopefully you remember I came to your school, and how you doing? And see if I can come and be an advisor or get a job in January or something. So being found, really important. When you go and Google yourself, which sounds narcissistic, but it's not. That's what employers are doing. That's what, to some extent, people looking in missions are doing, but definitely employers. Rich and I know a lot of recruiters, thousands of them, and that's what they do. Particularly when it comes to campus recruitment or student recruitment, we have given them tools where they can go and say, listen, I'm looking for Pepperdine grads that have a philosophy degree that, X, Y, and Z and are on the water polo team would be a benefit as well. It's happening every day, literally. So making sure that you have a robust profile that can be found is super, super critical. I'm going to skip over choosing a grad school, but I do want to mention that interesting sort of new evolution of LinkedIn is that we have something called university pages. Actually, have all tertiary education institutions around the world, 23,000 plus on LinkedIn, and that's useful for you not just for looking at Pepperdine, but other schools that you attended or you may attend, or schools maybe that your parents, uncles, friends, colleagues, whatever, went to as well. That school affinity is a real critical thing, and you'll find that it's a great way to sort of mine this alumni data. Okay, the reason this is important, and when we look at the alumni tool, we'll make it come alive a little bit. Key thing is that we essentially have the largest longitudinal study of career outcomes in the world. So while everybody might say, look at the U.S. News and World Report and say these are the best colleges, universities for computer science, or this may be the best college for marketing majors. Much of that stuff has been sort of predicated on, likely subjective information. So we actually know the ebb and flow of people from when they join, including in high school, by the way, now, through their internships and college experience, onto their first job, second job, third job, and so on. So we actually can figure out things like which school sends more alumni to work at Apple than any other company. Anybody guess this? Anybody have a guess on this one? That's what San Jose State. Most people think, oh, Stanford, MIT, whatever. It's actually San Jose State. And I'll share another quick answer with you, and that's we did a analysis of data on a certain type of person, basically a product manager in Silicon Valley, and everybody thinks that, well, most people they go to Stanford or Cal Berkeley, and then that's where all the great people come from. Turns out, interestingly enough, that the largest concentration of people in that role that are in tech companies in Silicon Valley comes from the Maharishi School of Management. No kidding. Like, I never even heard of the school, but apparently there's a connection between transcendental meditation and computer science. So everything that you think of may not actually be, in terms of outcomes, the way you think it is. Yes, Pepperdine alumni go on to do amazing things, and we can actually highlight that pretty rapidly, right? Okay, so we're actually going to change gears, and we're going to talk about the LinkedIn profile and actually do an exercise to start. So for you folks that don't have a profile, what I want to do, and Rich and I will help you, is actually we start the process of creating one. It's just super simple. You go to LinkedIn.com and start that process. You can kind of go ahead and do that if you're in front of your laptop. For everybody else, if you could actually open up your profile if you haven't already, that would be great. Once you've done that, I want you to actually partner with the person to your right, or to your left if no one's to your right. And I want you to look at their profile on their computer. And I want you to ask the question, would you hire this person? Take a few minutes to do that. And then the madness will continue. We're in training mode. So while you're all taking a little gut checks with your partner there, we're actually going to go pick on someone that's here. Hopefully here, we're going to use that as an example profile. Okay, let me get you back focused with me for a minute. Rich, if you're helping people with starting your profile, let's go ahead and continue to do it. It's cool. But I wanted to talk about a couple things because we're a little bit compressed on time. But I want to go through the profile, sort of the key elements of this thing. And if you're on the computer, feel free to sort of work on this or take some notes. But we're going to look at someone's profile here. Actually, I mentioned, recruiters are looking at you. For those of you that checked in with that link, you automatically went into this little check-in system. So I now have visibility into all kinds of folks that checked in already. And this is the stuff that's happening where people are looking. So I noticed that, Luke, are you here? Luke, you're online. I don't know. Luke checked in, and I got his profile here. And I think we're going to pick on someone in the room now. I think that's the route I'm going to go. Well, Luke's got a pretty good, really good profile, actually. Amy, we can't pick on you. Jordan here? Hi. All right, Jordan. One thing I'll say is you didn't send a custom message to me. You checked in, right? And one of my little pet peeves is, and that's not your fault because that's the flow you were sent to. But if you're connecting with somebody, and you're using the email to connect, or you notice that someone's a Pepperdine alum for 2 years out and they have this cool job down the street, you want to always craft, and your career services counselors will tell you, I always want to craft a unique message. Hey, I noticed we went to the same school, we both were in the same fraternity, we were both whatever on the team together, or on the same team, that type of thing. But let's take a look at Jordan's profile. We're actually going to look at it from not the solution perspective. We're going to look at the actual profile here. So Jordan and I got connected, I guess this morning at some point. And the first thing I noticed is she has a great headshot. If you were looking at your neighbor's profile or your own profile, you should have a headshot that is professional looking. It doesn't, you can literally take a camera or do a selfie if you have to do it that way, but use your partner to take a picture and upload that thing a little bit later if not. The picture actually matters immensely. In fact, without a picture, number one, you're much less likely to show up and search or have someone engage with your profile. With a picture, you're 7 times more likely for someone to actually look at your profile, which is really what you want. We're talking about your professional and professional brand here, essentially. So I noticed the picture, there is no tag in there. I know it's on campus, and so there's nothing that connects Jordan with anything. There's no other people in there. A nice headshot doesn't need to be super fancy. Super critical. Step 1. Anybody not have a headshot? The new people? Okay, very important to do. So that's definitely step 1. Step 2 is your summary. A lot of people think, well, I haven't done anything yet. I worked at J. Crew and I go to school. Like, what do you want me to say? I read this profile and was like, wow, this is pretty smart, right? And if you read Jordan's profile, you'll see what I'm talking about. It doesn't start out saying computer science. What's your major? Of course, naturally. Public relations major, looking for an opportunity in the public relations agency world. It says, I'm someone that's worked in sales for years and realized how important great communication, conversation, relationships are. And that struck me as like, well, that's pretty smart. Looking at that summary alone makes me think, well, it's not some student trying to be like, hey, I want to have a job. And this applies, it doesn't matter if you're doing sculpture, you're studying philosophy, you're a salesperson, a PR person, doesn't matter. Everyone should take the time to write a 2 or 3 sentence summary that highlights, essentially who they are. I change mine frequently. And a lot of the times I highlight the fact that I'm blessed to have 3 kids, a wife that's still with me after 20 years. I don't exactly say it that way. And that's, for me, that's my passion. Everything else is secondary, right? For me. And probably for a lot of people. But then I mentioned that I also like to do adventures, and I'm interested in a lot of different things. It entices people, and it differentiates me from other people. So step 1, got to have a picture, good headshot, professional headshot. 2, you got to have a summary that really highlights who you are, right? If I'm Warner Brothers, I'm coming up here on campus, I'm going to do some due diligence. And if you have a summary there, or of course a LinkedIn profile and a summary, I'm glad 9 times out of 10 read that. And this is not me telling you this, it's literally talking to, and having been a recruiter, but talking to thousands of recruiters who do college and campus recruiting. That's what they look at. Going down the profile here, you've got your experience as a sales associate, and you actually, really important that you have that there. One thing that you'll notice is over on this right rail here is an ad from J.Crew about their jobs. Yes, you were in sales, but what they're doing is they're actually, because you worked at J.Crew, or do work there, they're actually using sort of advertising on your profile essentially to attract people to come work there. And that creates, for you, Jordan, it creates a lot of sort of brand equity being connected with J.Crew, right? The other thing it does, certainly I would imagine, is that when you graduate and they need a PR person, they will kind of be putting two and two together. And that offer, along with all the other offers you have, you can sit back with your friends and figure out where you're going to go. So having your experience, no matter what you've done, is great. I also noticed that you're assistant coach of the swim team. Guess what? I've got a 16-year-old and a 15-year-old. They are super competitive swimmers in North Carolina. One's a state champion, or was a state champion 2 years ago in 100 fly. The other is 500 meters. If you send me a note and say, Rob, I noticed you know, or your brother or whoever, Rich knows someone at this company that come to visit us on campus or has an internship, guess what that sparked my interest? I mean, they're like, look, that's something in there that's really interesting to me. As far as I'm concerned, you got a ton of really cool experience, and they have a lot of things that are sort of in common. Languages. There's a space there when you hit the edit button, and when you're a new user, it'll bring you through this. That actually helps you put languages in if you have them. So you have some Spanish and some German. That's cool, and it's important to have that. One of the pieces I have that really is a big deal. In fact, there's a whole new sort of marketplace for this, is the volunteerism in causes. So if you've done volunteering, if you've devoted your time to a cause, you can actually highlight that, and you absolutely should be highlighting that here. My sons want my wife to Belize on a mission trip instead of having their Christmas vacation. And, you know, initially they're teenagers, so they're like, yeah, well, I don't want to do that, I want to play basketball and video games. And it really changed their perspective on life. It completely did. So that's something that's in their profile. Not to pitch that they did it, but because it's something they're very passionate about, and it's something that really, you know, sets them apart. If you're in organizations, Kappa Gamma, there's, you know, probably a lot of connectivity there, and I'll show you what I mean by in a minute. In the PRFSA, those types of connection points, in addition, by the way, to being in your student group for Pepperdine, and then when you're an alumni in your alumni group, those things are where you're going to really find a lot of opportunity, you know, economically or otherwise. So it's really important that you have a connection to those organizations. You've got your skills in here. I love the fact that Facebook's number 5, or at 5 endorsements for Facebook. Endorsements are kind of funky in that people endorse each other all the time, sort of arbitrarily. But I can assure you there's a master plan at LinkedIn, and that involves the utility of essentially making valid sort of these endorsements over time. And I won't get into all the details if we don't have time, but I'll put it to you this way. If you have a specific a skill, maybe you take an online course at some point, or you take a course here, getting that stuff into your profile and its associated skills is super critical in building influence, particularly as a student or a recent grad. Very, very important. And you can seek out Cassie, and she can explain that to you in more depth. Of course, you have your school. When you select your school, all you do is the type ahead, meaning you start typing Pepperdine and it'll pop up. This is super important. And then I want to back up to that in a second, and then on down the line. There's also an aspect of this that you don't have, Jordan, which is as far as I can tell, which is the ability to actually connect your profile with images, videos, that type of thing. So even if you've done like presentation or you were quoting a story or whatever. You can start adding these visual elements to your profile. And I'll show you what I mean by that in my profile. I've got my summary, and then right underneath it, I've got a picture. I've got a link to a presentation, a link to a video presentation, and just some street art because I'm into street art. So that really highlights your experiences. I've also done a couple of presentations. You can even do this if you're doing some interesting classwork. Get this thing on LinkedIn. So if you're with me, Jordan, you'll see that you can actually start to, I lost your profile. You can start to use that for the purpose of creating a visual story. And pretty soon, by the way, you'll be able to do that even more easily by way of things like the app we have for iPhone and the Android and stuff like that. Great way to be able to manage your profile that way as well. How much time do we have, Rebecca? Okay, let me pause for a minute and see if there's any questions. But if you have to download a ton of information, I don't know if you've retained any of it, which is why I'm not a professor, because imagine it'd be like, what questions can I answer? Yes?
When you're listing your experiences, like other things, would you suggest me a paragraph format like that, or like your resume?
Yeah, I tend to be more take your resume in a paragraph mode and then sort of apply all the work you've done and the coaching you've got in your resume in a paragraph oriented mode and put it into LinkedIn. That's my strong preference. Bullet points can be useful, but I think particularly when you're looking for your first job or internship and so on, I think it's more important to tell a story. And essentially, to some extent, that's in a paragraph scenario, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think important is that really good statement resume. You don't want to have one page when you first get started. As you get more experience, you have one page. So it's not proficient people about things that you can from the world everything you've got, right? You're going to get rid of some special volunteer work you might have done. It's not going to get the prioritization right to get to that on page. So let it go, just kind of that third up moment. I really like the teacher experience, background, and I know more about you, and that's where you're going to shine and all that information.
Okay. Yes.
In terms of content, what would you say less is more? You talked about the projects and websites, blogs that we may have. So I don't know what sort of message what should be on.
Yeah, it's a great question. The question is, what should be on the profile? How much stuff, right? And I think the key there is to sort of balance it out. You will find that people are looking for, as recruiters or whoever's looking at your profile, they're looking for some connection point because they know that, especially with new grads, if they're an alum of Pepperdine, you're in a good position, right? But if that's not what they're looking for, they're going to be looking for this other story. I mentioned like Jordan with swimming. That's attractive to me because my kids swim. So if I'm hiring people, it's not like a reason to hire someone, but it's a story, right? So I would think about it more compartmentalized, like what stories can I tell? What have I done for my school or society or whatever? What have I done that I can highlight in addition to the experiences I've had at work? If you are working at a gas station pumping gas, put it down and make it exciting and put the story down. If you're doing an internship at SpaceX, well, obviously it seems cool out of the gates, but they both can be relatively useless. So I think chunking it down into little stories that you're telling, and the huge advantage you have is the fact that you have all these people, your students and peers, to help you. Yes. Oh, cool.
Daisy, when you find a position that you're interested in LinkedIn, and say you have an alumni works in that company, how do you start it?
That's a really important question. The question is, I find a job, and I want to apply to the job, all right? and you want to do a couple of things before you actually apply a job. And how do you manage alumni connectivity? So we don't have a lot of time, so let's actually experience this, right? Let's actually look first at something that you'll find interesting. First, let's just find a job. Does anybody have a job that they absolutely are psyched to do that we can go find really quick? Otherwise, I'll just pick one. You looking for a PR job, Jordan? Any job yet? Okay, cool. So I'm going to go to public relations, and if you go to this website, linkedin.com/student jobs. In fact, when you have a profile and you go in there, under jobs, you'll see jobs. They will be student jobs, meaning they're the list of internships and entry-level jobs that I talked about. So check this out. Red Hat is a real good example. They're looking for an internal communications internship, a community facilitation internship in Raleigh, right? Let's just pick that job for a second. Any interest in going to apply? Jordan? It's too bad. It's too bad because if you connect with me, you'll find that I know the VP of recruiting and I know the VP of sales and product at Red Hat. I pretty much can help you get this job. So that's too bad. I'm teasing. But it's a really good example. So the first piece of information here when you go and look at a job is, in addition to all of the information about the job, over on the right-hand side, it'll tell you people you know. Or if you just join LinkedIn, let me make it simple. You go get 20 connections, right? Go grab 20 connections. I had this discussion with my niece Paris to listen. Connect with your dad. He's like in the entertainment industry. He's 58. He knows a lot of people. And when you go to look at that internship at Getty Museum, you'll notice that he knows 3 people, or his brothers or sister know people that actually work there. So you should always look for the connectivity, family, and of course alumni connectivity. Now, before you do anything else, before you apply to the job or send a message, the second thing you should do is you should go to, right, that's Red Hat Software is the company, you should go to the alumni tool. So step 1, I found the job or internship I want. Don't apply yet. See if there's anyone in that right rail that you know. Second, go to your school in the alumni tool, Pepperdine University. Sometimes I forget where I am, and it happens when you're my age. Go there and say, listen, here are the 31,000 alumni of Pepperdine University, including people that are currently there as well. Well, I'm only interested in people that work at Red Hat Software in this particular example. So let's see if anybody exists. I'm doing on the fly, so it could be 0. But no, it's not 0. It's actually 2. So Michael is a director at Red Hat University. Frances is a business development manager. She graduated in '92. These are the old people that can get you a job. So now you know who went there, right? And you know the job, and you've got some connection. Now you go ahead and you go through the process of applying to the job, or better yet, sending a note to this alumnus, right, and saying, hey, Francis, I noticed that you work in San Francisco at the Red Hat Software Company, and I'm interested in a PR job, internship. I'm wondering if you could help me. In fact, here's a job I saw before I applied. I wanted to send you a note. Now, if someone sent me a note and said, hey, I noticed that LinkedIn's hiring interns. I'm up at Ithaca College right now. Guess what? That's going to pique my interest. I'm going to help that person. It's the natural affinity. I would even contend that it's a similar affinity at Pepperdine because it's a little bit smaller. It's not as massive. Whereas my wife, for example, went to UCLA. She's got to pare it down. You have less need to pare it down. So if this makes sense, find a job. Don't apply. Find out who you went to school with, or who your parents or connections know. And to do that, that is a process you should follow every single time. Yes, sir.
Instead of applying for the job, and the job is on LinkedIn, does it show up differently on the employer side that it came from LinkedIn?
That's a great question. Do the employers know that you applied by way of LinkedIn? Is that what you're asking? What's your name, sir?
Glenn.
Glenn. It's a great question. Not necessarily. many companies, when you go to apply, they know exactly where you came from, for sure. But many large companies in particular have these applicant tracking systems, right? So you're essentially putting yourself in the so-called black hole of death, where then you're just a guy on a list of applicants. And some recruiter trying to do their job is going through a million people trying to figure out, who's qualified. It becomes even tougher with campus recruiting because they're stuck on this whole thing that I'm going to go to these 20 schools every year. I'm going to go to these same 20 schools, and I'm going to hire people from those schools. And I think those are the people I want. They don't know that Glenn is the guy they want, right? So it's a great question, and that's why if you pre-bake this strategy of reaching out to connections and alumni ahead of the actual application, two things occur. One is the affinity of people wanting to pay it forward and help you, which is natural, and two is the connection, the alumni connection. And I also contend that it sets you apart dramatically, right? So that's what you want to be doing. You eventually are going to have to apply, but they're not always going to show you came by way of LinkedIn. Now, the converse of that, or the sort of forward thinking, is they're going to look you up. And when they go by your LinkedIn profile, if it's robust and along the lines of what we've discussed, you could be in better shape. Great question. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. That's a good question. Rich, I don't know if you have a comment on that. I don't, the endorsements, the way they work, it's not easy to do that. You certainly could ask, for sure. And a lot of times, if you're doing something, in terms of work-wise, you can ask there right in person. But I don't know if you have any more experience or anything to add to that.
If you've got some close friends that, value your opinion, they know where your integrity is, we do find that one of the things about the questions is that kind of objectifies who you are. So if you say that you're excellent at Japanese, but you don't have a lot of endorsements, it probably means that a lot of people don't know that you're good at Japanese, which might kind of people don't gravitate towards that. So I would say that it's something that you can't exaggerate about what you've got, but if you know that you've got 3 or 4 solid skills and you want that to be highlighted, there's no problem about reaching out to those 15, 20, 35 people. You have a maximum 99 or so you can get each one, but they have a stack all the way out there with solid, it just takes it, you have a message to have people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that's part of like a broader strategy. So it's sort of like endorse away or don't, and then eventually we're going to actually arm you and your team with a little bit more detail on that as a follow-up fairly soon, and you'll be able to let everyone know about that.
Yeah. As practice is possible, or should I only add actually what would you recommend?
Great. So who should you connect with? Do you want to amass 1 million followers or connections or whatever? No, not necessarily. Let's make it simple. You want to start off by having roughly 25 connections. Why? Once you have about 25 connections, you start to see the universe of their connectivity come alive. And without that number, and it's a simple number, I want everyone to commit to doing that as homework. It's very simple. Once you have that done, then you're off to the races. Once you have experiences at work, internship, on campus, off campus, whatever, selectively connect with people that it makes sense to connect with. It's total common sense, right? I get hundreds of connection requests, and if they're not someone that I actually have an experience working with, or if they sent me a personal note of why we're going to get connected, I don't do it, because you'll find the utility will decrease very, very rapidly. It's a great question. Yeah. We're over time. Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to address the time. I know some of you guys have classes or whatever, feel free to talk. But Roger, I just stick around to answer your questions if you guys want to stick around a little bit longer. So thank you guys all very much for coming in, so appreciate it. And I hope you guys can stick around to have the additional conversation.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it. One other thing for, even if you're on your way out, just to go, one other thing to really, the crystal ball analogy that I mentioned is when you're on this alumni tool, you really can actually look at what people studied. So you can take the major field of study you're in now and look at the people that graduated in the last 5 years and see what they're doing. So maybe, I don't know if there's any freshmen here or sophomores, but if you're early on, you actually kind of look at that to figure out, well, what are these people doing now? Just an idea. But anyways, we'll stick around if you have questions. And appreciate everyone coming out and hosting us here. A pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.